This war didn't happen between countries. It happened between a government and its own people. In the late 19th century, Brazil was a brand new republic, still figuring itself out. Far from the bustling coastal cities, in the harsh arid backlands known as the Sertão, life was incredibly difficult. Drought, poverty, and a sense of abandonment by the new government were constant realities for the local population. In this desperate landscape, a wandering preacher emerged, a man named Antonio Conselheiro or Antonio the Counselor. He wasn't a revolutionary in the political sense. He was a spiritual leader who spoke of the coming end of the world and the need for a righteous life. His message of faith, communal living, and hope resonated deeply with the disenfranchised people of the Sertão landless peasants, former slaves, and indigenous people who felt left behind by the modernizing world. They began to follow him, drawn by his charisma and the promise of a better, more just existence. They eventually formed a community called Canudos. Canudos wasn't just a village, it was a symbol of a different way of life. It grew at an astonishing rate, swelling to over 25,000 residents, making it one of the largest population centers in the state of Bahia at the time. Inside Canudos, they lived by their own rules. There were no formal taxes paid to the distant government, no recognition of the secular republic which they viewed as and no class of wealthy landowners exploiting the poor. It was a self-sufficient society built on shared labor, deep religious faith, and mutual survival. To its inhabitants, Canudos was a sacred haven, a new Jerusalem. To the Brazilian government and the local elites, however, it was a terrifying threat. The landowners saw their cheap labor force disappearing into this new community. The Catholic Church saw Conselheiro as a heretic, a schismatic, leading people away from its authority. And the newly formed Brazilian Republic saw Canudos as a monarchist rebellion, a direct challenge to its fragile sovereignty. They couldn't tolerate a massive, independent settlement operating outside their control. Rumors and propaganda began to spread, painting Conselheiro as a dangerous fanatic and his followers as violent monarchists plotting to overthrow the republic. The government decided it had to act. They sent a military expedition to crush the settlement. They expected an easy victory. What followed was a profound miscalculation. A small group of about 100 soldiers set out for Canudos in late 1896, but they got ambushed by the Sertaneos, the people of the backlands, who used their intimate knowledge of the terrain to their advantage. The soldiers were utterly defeated and forced into a humiliating retreat. Stunned and enraged, the government sent a second, much larger expedition. This time, over 500 soldiers with machine guns were dispatched. Once again, they were outmaneuvered and decimated by the followers of Conselheiro, who fought with a ferocity born of desperation and faith. The defeat was a national scandal. Brazil's army had been beaten not by a foreign power, but by a group of peasants armed with old rifles, machetes, and religious fervor. Now, the conflict had escalated into a full-blown war. The Republic's honor was at stake. A third expedition was launched, this one led by a famous general with over 1,000 soldiers and artillery. They laid siege to Canudos, but the resistance was more organized and determined than they could have ever imagined. After months of brutal fighting, the army was once again repelled, its commander killed in battle. 3 failed attempts. 3 humiliations. The existence of Canudos was now an intolerable insult to the nation. The government decided to end it once and for all, no matter the cost. For the final assault, Brazil marshaled an overwhelming force, an army of over 10,000 soldiers, equipped with the most modern weaponry of the time, including massive Krupp cannons, imported from Germany, They began a relentless, months-long siege, cutting off all food and water supplies and bombarding the settlement day and night. The battle that ensued was one of the most brutal chapters in Brazilian history. The defenders of Canudos, men, women, and even children, refused to surrender. They fought for every single house, for every inch of their sacred ground. The army advanced slowly, destroying everything in its path. By October 1897, after nearly a year of conflict, the resistance finally collapsed. The settlement was a smoking ruin. The army showed no mercy. They executed the remaining prisoners, ensuring that almost no one survived. Canudos was systematically erased from the map. The War of Canudos serves as a dark and powerful reminder. It reveals a brutal truth. that sometimes the greatest perceived threat to a state is not an external enemy, but its own people seeking independence and a different way of life. This wasn't a war about restoring order. It was about imposing control at any cost. The story of Canudos forces us to ask uncomfortable questions about power, faith, and what happens when a government decides that a group of its own citizens is simply too independent to be allowed to exist. It's a history that was almost buried, a story of resistance that deserves to be remembered. If you want to learn more about the wars and forgotten histories that shaped our world, make sure to subscribe and join our community. Thanks for watching.